The brisk autumn air nipped at the townspeople as they gathered in front of the monument shaped like an old oak trunk, its smooth stone inscribed with the names of Fernford's founders. A hush fell over the gathering once the candles were lit, each soft glow dancing in the cool breeze. The vigil was meant to honor the memory of a beloved town benefactor, Mr. Grimsby, who had passed away the week before. Despite the solemnity of the occasion, a certain buzz of excitement flickered through the crowd. Lucy Farnsworth, the town's elementary school teacher, stood alongside her close friend, Harriet Bell, a retired nurse and resident of Fernford for nearly 4 decades. Both women sang softly as the rest of the group joined in the final hymn, Amazing Grace. The same hymn Mr. Grimsby had always insisted on whenever there was a community event. The old man had been something of an eccentric, prodding neighbors to remember their roots and pay tribute to the town's forebears. Tonight, the entire town had turned out with their candles to ensure his memory would not be forgotten. As the hymn intensified, Lucy glanced up at the statue's base in time to see the small congregation shift to the right. A hush fell once more. Someone whispered. Then another hushed voice followed. It was impossible to hear exactly what had happened, but soon people began shuffling to make room. The last notes of the hymn drifted into the air, replaced by a rustle of eager whispers. The entire assembly seemed to lean forward toward the base of the monument, drawn to the cryptic sight of a single folded piece of parchment list beneath the etched plaque listing the founders' names. "Is that a note?" Harriet murmured, aiming her candle's flickering flame to illuminate the shape. "Who put it there?" Lucy tightened her hand around the candle, the pool of melted wax dangerously close to the rim of the paper cup that shielded the flame. "I guess we'll find out soon," she whispered back. "This is odd. Who would leave a note at a vigil?" 2 men from the volunteer fire department, Paul Henderson and Stephen Morris, stepped forward. They spoke quietly before Stephen carefully removed the strange note. As he gently peeled the parchment away from the plaque, Lucy noticed that no tape or tack had been used. The small missive was simply tucked between the stone edging and the metal plate. Everything about this seemed deliberate, as if placed by a person who wanted it to be easily found. All eyes followed Stephen's movements. The hush thickened. Then, in the circle of candlelight, he gingerly opened it. Stephen's brow wrinkled as he skimmed the words. He gave a puzzled grunt, read it once more, and passed it to Paul. The vigil gathered closer, but only Paul and Stephen seemed privy to the note's contents. "Could you read it, Stephen?" Harriet finally asked when the crowd's hushed expectancy became too intense. "We're all friends here." Clearing his throat, Stephen held the paper close to the candle flame. He raised his voice enough for everyone to hear, but did so carefully, trying to preserve the respectful silence. "It says, 'Within the hidden walls lies a secret so grand, a treasure awaits where the oak used to stand. Whispers of gold in the wake of twilight, your dreams come true if you follow the light.'" A pause descended over the crowd, enveloping them in speculation. In a single moment, the memory of Mr. Grimsby's peaceful life was overshadowed by the strange verse. Then voices flared in excitement. "Sounds like a treasure map," Harriet said, eyebrows raised. "Though I can't imagine what that hidden walls part means, or the oak used to stand. We do have a lot of old oaks around here." Lucy looked down at the base of the monument. Indeed, it had been shaped like an old oak trunk. "Maybe they're referring to this monument," she said softly. "After all, it's in the shape of a large oak, right?" Paul Henderson, nodding in agreement, handed the note back to Stephen. Then, like a gentle wave, the crowd began to disperse in hushed discussion. Some quietly returned to their homes, candles still glowing in trembling hands. Others stuck around to murmur among themselves, curious about the cryptic words. The night had gone from solemn reflection to a glimmer of adventure, all delivered by a small piece of parchment jammed beneath a plaque. Harriet gave Lucy a conspiratorial glance. "We'll do a bit of detective work ourselves, won't we?" Lucy smiled in return. Of course, with the entire town stirred up, I'd guess it won't be long before we have all sorts of rumors flying about. They agreed to stop by Lucy's house. There, in the warmth of Lucy's living room, they would comb through Fernford's limited historical records. Lucy, with her experience preparing school lessons, had plenty of old documents and newspaper clippings that touched on the town's long-lost legends. Harriet always maintained a knack for sensing where secrets were hidden. By the time they reached Lucy's home, the wind had picked up, rattling the maples that lined her yard. They settled into the cozy living room, Harriet occupying the plump brown recliner next to the fireplace, Lucy seated on the rug near a stack of old binders. A collection of flickering tea lights offered the only illumination. Lucy ran her fingertips over the spines, searching for the binder labeled Town Legends and Myths. "Here it is," she announced. Flipping open the binder, Lucy scanned the table of contents. A handful of sections were dedicated to local superstitions, and one was called The Oak Monument, folklore surrounding the town's founders. Harriet leaned forward in her seat, eyes glinting with curiosity. They spent an hour reading about how the original founders of Fernford, chief among them a man named Robert Finn and a woman named Harriet Greenwood, had built the settlement along the Fern River. The Oak Monument, erected nearly 6 decades ago, commemorated the largest oak tree that once stood at the heart of the old farmland. People used to gather under its sprawling branches for harvest festivals, weddings, and even informal town meetings. Rumor had it that there was a trunk hidden among the roots, but the binder held no mention of treasure. Why would someone leave a cryptic note during the vigil? Harriet mused, rubbing her eyes. It was nearing midnight. It's so theatrical. And the mention of gold, that line about whispers of gold in the wake of twilight, does raise one's hackles. Lucy gently closed the binder and smiled in faint amusement. We're both up past our bedtimes, rummaging through old stories. Let's try to get some rest. Maybe tomorrow we'll learn more from the townspeople. The next morning, Lucy walked to Harrow's coffee shop to indulge in her usual morning cappuccino. She found Harriet already there, sipping a cup of Earl Grey at the corner table. The chatter inside was more animated than usual. It seemed no one was talking about the vigil for Mr. Grimsby at all. Instead, the talk focused on the cryptic note. "I heard from Mabel at the library that the note might be referencing an old safe left by the original caretaker in the basement of the church," one person said. No, I've heard that it's near the old orchard," another chimed in. Lucy settled into a chair next to Harriet. They shared an amused look as the coffee shop hummed with rumours. She was immediately roped into conversation by Miss O'Callaghan, who had overheard that Lucy had read countless local archives. Miss O'Callaghan pelted Lucy with questions, hoping the teacher might confirm some of the wilder claims. "There's no mention of any hidden valuables associated directly with the oak," Lucy said kindly. "At least, not that I've ever come across. Whoever left that note must be playing some kind of prank, or they know something we don't." When Harriet and Lucy left the coffee shop, they decided to pay a visit to the church's basement where Mr. Grimsby used to help store donations. Father Benedict, an affable older priest, welcomed them to rummage around in the musty old rooms, though he was skeptical they'd find anything resembling hidden gold. Old coats, canned goods, and dusty hymn books lined the shelves. Harriet found an antique trunk tucked away under piles of tablecloths. The trunk was locked, but Father Benedict produced a small key. Inside, they discovered only an assortment of disused candlesticks and fake flower arrangements. "No gold," Harriet sighed, pushing aside a wilted plastic rose. "I'm not surprised, though I must admit I was hoping for something more dramatic." They thanked Father Benedict and headed out. Their next destination was Tim's Antiques, located at the east end of Fernford. Tim was known for his local expertise on everything from vintage furniture to the region's lore about hidden stashes. He was a kindly older man with salt and pepper hair and a magnifying glass perpetually perched on a chain around his neck. "Treasure?" Tim exclaimed, his eyes sparkling. "I remember hearing something about that years ago. Let me think." He closed his eyes as though trying to recall an old memory. Yes, there was talk of a rumour. Something about Robert Finney was rumoured to have stashed a small fortune from his days as a travelling merchant. The story was that he left cryptic clues all around the land he donated, which eventually became Fernford's public park and farmland. But no one ever found anything substantial. Lucy and Harriet exchanged a quick glance. Could someone have revived that rumour by leaving a note? Lucy asked, curiosity nibbling at her. Tim shrugged, rummaging behind his counters. I haven't heard anyone talk about it for years. But if you want details, you might check with Bernard Fletcher. He fancies himself an amateur historian of sorts. He's always rummaging through old legal documents. He might know more about Robert Finn's land grants and whether there were any references to hidden stashes. They parted from Tim with thanks and walked through the main street to the next stop on their informal investigation, Bernard Fletcher's small law office. Harriet pressed the doorbell with a finger, and a moment later, Bernard, a balding, bespectacled man in his early 60s, greeted them with a slight air of absent-mindedness. Stacks of musty ledgers lined his office, and Lucy let her gaze wander over the precarious towers of dog-eared legal volumes. So, you want to dig up information on Robert Finn? Bernard asked, settling behind his desk. He peeled off his reading glasses and gave them a friendly smile. You might be in luck. I have some old deeds that mention him. Let me see. He turned to one of the cluttered filing cabinets and began rummaging, muttering to himself as he plucked out battered folders. Bernard eventually slid a thick envelope across the desk. Inside were copies of grants, carefully typed transcripts of older documents, and letters referencing boundaries of farmland. Lucy and Harriet perused them, pausing at a letter addressed to Robert Finn's nephew, dated 1851. The letter vaguely referenced a legacy of gratitude bestowed upon this land, but no direct mention of gold or treasure. Halfway through the envelope's contents, Harriet stumbled upon a single line in a settlement letter that caught her eye. And so, as twilight falls, may all who stand beneath the great oak recall the wealth of community that grows unseen. The phrase wealth of community had a ring reminiscent of the note's talk of treasure, though Harriet pointed it out excitedly, saying it could hint at something tangible hidden under the oak. Lucy had to remind her that it might refer merely to the intangible goodness of neighbourly support. Still, the parallels were enough to make them wonder. They thanked Bernard, promising to return the documents once they finished studying them. As they stepped back outside, Harriet exhaled sharply. It's beginning to look like that oak monument is a key element, she said. That line in the old letter and the shape of the monument. There must be something there, right? Lucy nodded slowly. It's even possible that Mr. Grimsbow knew something about this. He was always so interested in preserving the memory of the founders, but we can't ask him now. They travelled to the monument again, this time in broad daylight. To their surprise, they found a group of townspeople milling around with bits of chalk or scraps of paper. Some knelt around the stone base, searching for a hidden compartment. Others tapped the plaque, listening for hollow echoes. No one had found anything yet. Several passers-by recognized Lucy and Harriet. Some asked if they'd made progress. Others shared half-baked theories. All parted ways with a new swirl of speculation in their heads. 3 days passed. The frenzy over the note had not died down. In fact, eager talk of the treasure had only increased. People in Fernford were dreaming of sunken chests or golden coins stashed away centuries earlier, waiting to be found. As Lucy made her daily walk to the school, she overheard parents in the parking lot quizzing their children about the local legend. Even Harriet admitted that she couldn't go to bed at night without mentally reciting the lines from the note, wondering if a vital clue had been overlooked. Finally, Harriet couldn't stand the tension any longer. She rose early one morning, determined to conduct a thorough search of the monument. She coaxed Lucy from her warm kitchen to take part in the effort. Armed with flashlight, measuring tape, and a small hammer, they circled the base while the sun was still just a pale glimmer beyond the horizon. They discovered what might have been missed by casual observers, a small recess in the underside of the oak-shaped base. It was partially filled with debris, bits of leaves, and a clump of mud. Harriet folded back her sleeves, knelt down, and began scooping out the debris with gloved hands. Lucy shone the flashlight into the recess. Her breath caught when a glimpse of metal flickered in the beam's reflection. "There's definitely something," Harriet said breathlessly, scraping at the dirt. Another moment of digging revealed a small iron box, its sides crusted with rust. Harriet pried it loose, and together they held it in the pale morning light. Hearts pounding with excitement, they exchanged an eager look. This could be the final clue, or perhaps the treasure itself. The box had a simple latch, equally rusted but still functional. Harriet carefully flicked it open. Inside lay a folded piece of parchment that crinkled softly as she lifted it. She and Lucy peered at the spidery handwriting. It was certainly old, perhaps from the 19th century or earlier. The text read, "To those who seek to unearth the fortune of Robert Finn, know that the true value of these walls is not weighed in gold. Prove your good will by giving back to the land, and the land shall bless you abundantly. Turn your eyes to the orchard, and your labors will bear fruit." Harriet let out a disappointed laugh. "So it's not exactly a treasure map, more of a riddle about giving back to the land." Lucy carefully set the parchment aside. Beneath it was a tarnished old key. They examined it closely, hoping for a clue. The key's head was carved in the shape of an oak leaf, but there was no inscription. Harriet's mind raced. Could this be part of a bigger puzzle? Maybe it's for a door or a chest or something at the orchard. Fernford's orchard was located near the outskirts of town. Over the generations it had fallen into disuse, leaving behind scattered trees that bore fruit only sporadically. With the note's hint about turning eyes to the orchard, Lucy felt they had their next lead. They arrived at midday, pushing past the sagging wooden gate that squeaked open in protest. The orchard was half wild, the grass up to their calves, but the trees still stood under the crisp autumn sky. Lucy let her gaze sweep across the orchard, searching for something that might fit the key. Harriet tried the latch to the old storage shed at the far corner, but that door had a simple padlock, and the oak leaf key didn't fit. They found a rickety greenhouse, mostly broken glass but nothing locked. After nearly an hour of fruitless searching, Harriet flopped onto a tree stump in defeat. "This is maddening," she complained, wiping a bead of sweat from her forehead. "We have a key. We have a cryptic note referencing an orchard. Why isn't anything locked out here?" Lucy took a seat next to her. She gazed into the distance, noticing the orchard's most ancient apple trees. Each trunk was twisted like a silent guardian. "We might be missing something," she said softly. "The riddle might refer more to a symbolic treasure like the orchard itself, being the land's true bounty. Robert Finn might have wanted future generations to care for it rather than search for gold." Just as Harriet was about to answer, the sound of footsteps broke through the silence. They turned to see an older woman approaching, Gertrude Markham. Her family had once owned a portion of the orchard. Gertrude gave them a quizzical smile. "Fancy meeting you two here," she said. "I've been out taking photos of the orchard for a historical project. You seem deep in thought." They briefly explained their quest, showing Gertrude the iron box and the key. Her eyes lit up with recognition. "I remember hearing my grandmother speak of a hidden nook in the orchard's old caretaker's cottage. She said it once contained something important, either documents or valuables. The caretaker's cottage was abandoned decades ago, then torn down. All that's left is the foundation near the east corner of the orchard." Harriet was on her feet at once. After thanking Gertrude, they trudged through the tall grass and woven branches until they reached the orchard's eastern boundary. There, partially covered by sprawling vines, was a rectangular foundation of crumbling stone. They circled it carefully, searching for any sign of a locked box or compartment. Eventually, Lucy noticed a small rectangle of concrete near a corner of the foundation, distinct from the rest of the rubble. She brushed away the vines to reveal a rusted metal hinge. With great effort, Harriet pried at the hidden door, using an old trowel from the greenhouse. The slab lifted, revealing a dark, hollow space beneath. Lucy's flashlight beam sliced through the darkness. Inside was a wooden crate with rusted brackets. The crate's lid had a lock, and strangely, the shape of the keyhole matched the oak leaf key. Hearts thumping in unison, Harriet and Lucy crouched together. Harriet inserted the key, turned it with a metallic scrape, and with a final pop, the lid opened. Both women sucked in their breath. The crate contained a scattering of coins, tarnished from time but undeniably silver. There were perhaps a couple dozen coins, carefully arranged around a small cloth pouch. Lucy lifted the pouch, reaching inside. Her fingers closed around something small but solid. She pulled out a signet ring bearing the initials R.F. The craftsmanship was intricate, the metal likely gold. Beside the ring was a folded letter, far more legible than the old note. It read in neat, dated script. Should you hold this key and find this place, know that the wealth stored here is but a fraction of the riches that lie in tending the orchard and fostering community. These coins are a token of gratitude. Wear the ring as a sign of your stewardship, for the land is entrusted to all who dwell here. Robert Finn. Giddy excitement bubbled up in Harriet's chest. It may not have been a grand treasure chest full of jewels, but it was a tangible piece of Fernford's past, a link to the founder himself. Lucy laughed in amazement as she gathered the items. "This is incredible," she murmured. "It's real proof that there was something hidden all these years. Maybe that strange note at the Vigil was trying to hint that Fernford's greatest resource is our community bond, but also that Robert Finn left a modest bit of treasure behind." They carefully closed the crate, locked it once more, and walked back through the orchard, determined to share this discovery in a way that would reflect the founder's intention. Harriet noted that part of the orchard could be revived for community gardening, perhaps with the coins used as a seed fund, a gesture to keep giving back. It was an exciting prospect, honoring the spirit of Robert Finn's message. When they returned to town, word soon spread of what Lucy and Harriet had found. A spontaneous meeting was called in the town hall. The crate and its contents were presented to a hushed audience. As the story was told, how the orchard was the true treasure, how the farmland was meant to be nurtured, and how a small portion of silver coins had indeed been tucked away, Fernford's residents broke into applause and cheers. After the final sentence, questions about who left the note at the Vigil lingered. Many speculated that it was someone who knew the orchard's history. Others theorized that Mr. Grimsby, in one of his final acts, had arranged for the note to be posted after his passing. He had often spoken of how knowledge of the past should inspire a better future. Though no one claimed responsibility for planting the note, there was a palpable sense that Mr. Grimsby's spirit somehow lived on in this noble endeavour. Later that week, Lucy and Harriet joined the mayor as they placed the ring and a few of the silver coins on display in the local museum. The rest of the coins would fund orchard renovations, and the orchard itself would be open for the community's use, with the goal of eventually providing free fruit every harvest season. A commemorative plaque would stand at the orchard's entrance, referencing Robert Finn's words, "Prove your goodwill by giving back to the land, and the land shall bless you abundantly." The next candlelit vigil for Mr. Grimsby took place exactly a month after he had passed, under the apple trees by moonlight. Children and seniors alike gathered among rows of newly planted saplings, each person holding a candle that illuminated the orchard with a gentle glow. As Lucy looked around, she felt the deeper meaning of the note's final line, "Your dreams come true if you follow the light." It had led them not just to a hidden box of coins, but also to a renewed spirit of generosity a neighbourly connection. Even if her arms felt chilled by the evening breeze, Lucy felt a powerful warmth inside, a quiet gratitude for a puzzle that had drawn everyone closer. After the prayer of remembrance concluded, a breeze swept through the orchard, rustling the leaves in the soft glow of the candles. Lucy paused to take in the scene. It was simple yet profound. People standing in circles of light, sharing friendship, laughter, and some tears. Harriet joined her, hooking an arm around Lucy's shoulders. They exchanged a knowing smile that needed no words. Indeed, the real treasure of Fernford lay not in the silver coins or the ring, but in the community raised around them. Through the gentle flame of unity, and a curious note slipped onto the base of a monument one chilly autumn evening, the town had discovered, or perhaps rediscovered, its own heart. And it was more than enough.